All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA video. Got Nick here for you guys on this 5-game slate. What are kind of initial thoughts for the slate?
Yeah, I think we're waiting on a little bit of news, but I actually like the 5-game slates. Like we saw yesterday when we have the 11, 12 gamers, there's almost too much news to process
Yeah.
at times. And then when we're dealing with the 2 gamers, if you miss out on a play that goes off, your night's pretty much over. So this is kind of the sweet spot to me. I always say it like 4 to 8 games, kind of what I like to play. I do prefer the bigger slates to the smaller, but I mean, yeah, we're waiting on some news. We already have some value. But yeah, I feel like I have a decent grasp of the slate, regardless of how things break, which was kind of the opposite of last night.
Yeah, we were teasing prior to the show that like basically none of the centers hit, and like in retrospect, like we couldn't even think of like which value center that was supposed to be safe or good hit, and I still can't think of any. Like Robinson sucked, Richard sucked,
Muscala was another one.
Muscala was bad, and then Gallinari, who was the natural pivot, just off of Gafford, did not do anything either. So it was like, ugh, what the heck?
Yeah, man, my night was over early, and then Hartenstein I think was okay off the
Yeah.
bench. Um, but yeah, man, too many value centers last night. Is what it is. We're on to today.
I don't think it was a mistake, but I think like just eating the chalk for chalk's sake yesterday was the mistake. And I feel like Chuck and I kind of hit that home pretty well. But at the same time, it's like, man, 3K Muscala, that is chalk. You kind of are forced into playing it. So it's just like one of those things where he missed. It sucks. If you fade him, you probably didn't benefit from it because you probably played another value. So it's just a
Yeah,
weird
well,
day.
even the pivots did poorly too because Yurtseven ended up coming off the bench, which was annoying. And then
Mm-hmm.
I know we were like, or you guys were on Orlando Robinson as like a good GPP pivot, but he finished with like 20 fantasy points, so like it wasn't like he
Yeah.
was winning you anything either. It was just a rough night all around. Like would have been better off paying up at center, which is easy to say now in hindsight, but on to
It
the
was
next.
it was a weird day in the sense that like you could easily do studs and duds and like you should have done it, but if you did like a fair and balanced build, like you probably did really well. Like my best lineup was Randall, Simons,
Randall was good, yeah.
White, and it was an ugly build. It's just like I kind of just wanted to force one lineup in like that, and it was my best. It was just a weird day. But
Yeah, there was one other thing that killed me. I just remembered too. Derrick Jones Jr. was pretty low owned compared to some of these
yes,
other pieces for Dallas, and I was feeling great. Like he came out first stint, looked amazing, and then he was out for the game. So that hurt pretty bad. He was actually in. I only played 3 or 4 last night because I had to do Discord, and he was in everything for me. So
I
10%
forgot
owned.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was sitting pretty for about 10 minutes, and then my night was all right. Put on the NFL after that, but.
I feel like that's a good starting point for today, though, talking about
Mhm.
Dallas injury wise. So we haven't projected for minutes right now, NFL wise. Gosh, I just caught that. Yeah, that wasn't a good watch, anyways. But Derrick Jones, we haven't projected for 15 minutes. We also have Grant Williams projected back tonight, which means Prosper, who I was thinking maybe would be a decent like value play on this slate today. He's not going to be anyone we're looking at. Exum was someone that actually played really well, pulling in a little bit of ownership, especially on FanDuel and DraftKings. Is that a situation where if Derrick Jones, if Grant Williams get some run in this game, that he might be way too overowned, or is it like we got to eat the chalk?
It kind of feels crazy to say this, and it almost took Jones going out for him to really get going last night. But when I'm looking at the rotations, like on Popcorn Machine, it seems like they want Exum to really play the Kyrie role when Kyrie's out, which means there's going to be minutes for Exum with Luca off the floor, where he's really the one kind of running the offense. So I think even starting next to Luca, with some of these guys coming back in, like they're going to rely on him to take shots and make shots and kind of facilitate. So I like Exum, and it's crazy to say at this price tag. But yeah, man, I mean, it just feels like he's going to be heavily involved whenever Kyrie's out of the lineup. He truly is the backup there, and they're using him as that rotational piece to kind of stagger with Luca. Like when Luca's off the floor, you need kind of a floor general. I
Mm-hmm.
know in the past they've looked at THJ to do that a little bit. Hardy is a guy that I know we're high on, but not necessarily there yet in terms of career
Yeah.
development. So I think Exum is that guy. I will say with Jones coming back, that could cut into him a little bit. I want to look at
It,
the latest injury report. I think some of these
yeah.
guys are still questionable though. Like Jones is questionable,
Mm-hmm.
THJ is questionable, Williams is in, and I do like Williams.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think he's just filling that Kyrie role, so I feel better about him than a lot of the other guards in that range.
I will say, I like coming into the slate. If you would have told me that the secondary option to Luca, or one of the other options compared to Luca on this team, was chalk, I would have guessed it was Grant Williams at his price tag. So him at 21% and 12%, that to me is pretty appealing, just because we have seen this before. He might not light it up and he might not dominate, but he does feel a little bit too cheap. And he almost, I don't want to say safe, but he almost feels safe as well. I know the matchup might not be the best, but if we can get 30 minutes out of him with Kyrie out, I think that's key. I do like that. But to your point about Exum, maybe that is a whole different role, and then maybe Grant Williams then isn't doing as well because he was kind of the third option. It was Luca, Kyrie, and now it could be Exum, and Exum probably a better option then.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough meat on the bone for both of them, especially if we
Mhm.
get word that either Hardaway or Jones are out. The thing with Williams is when you're going to get ceiling games out of him, he's going to be making threes. But I mean, if Exum's passing to him on the corners, like it makes sense that they can both score pretty well here. It is a nice pacey matchup, 231 total against the Lakers,
Mhm.
who are decent defensively, but the way they play, it's actually not bad for opposing teams when they are in competitive games. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine getting to Williams here. I like him as the starter. The Lakers are big, but I don't know that Lively's going to be on the floor all night.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think you could get to both and feel pretty good about it. Feel better about it certainly if one of THJ or Jones are out, but I think even with them in, like those are probably the first two Mavs I'd be getting to, not counting Luca.
Yeah, so we just got a comment saying Derek Jones Jr. is out. So we'll see if that updates here. I do have a question then, if that does hold up. Um, do you like Prosper at all, who got some minutes last night? I would say, I guess, if Tim Hardaway Jr. is also out, like if he gets 20 minutes, he has kind of been a point per minute player. I have not been able to find that many sub 4K plays that I think are rosterable. Would he be someone that you would have in a player pool, say if you were max entering, or is that just probably a little bit too thin?
I mean, it's tempting. I think to your point that there's just not a lot under 4K. If you're trying to
Mhm.
jam two studs like Luca with one of the Lakers or something, I think I'm okay with it. I will say I'm a little bit afraid that they're going to give Markieff Morris more minutes here. He did also play 20 last night,
Mhm.
not as efficient, but I think in a competitive game against a big team like LA, they'd probably lean on Keith a little bit more. They also like to have
Yeah.
that enforcer in there against AD, things like that. But yeah, I mean, the player, like, he had some good games in the preseason.
Yeah.
Talented young kid. I mean, he's definitely more of a 4 than a 5. So you're going to get minutes on the wing. And yeah, I think Jones being out, that should provide a bump for him. But I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember, was Green in last night or out?
I thought he was out as well. I
Yeah,
can check
I
real
think
quick
he's
actually.
out again too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have the official injury
But
report.
with Grant Williams back, I mean, that doesn't help for sure.
Right. Williams is back, but Green's out.
Yeah, Green sat last night.
Yeah, it's tricky because I mean, again, we're getting some guys back, we're losing some guys. I,
Mhm.
I will say this: I'm really not rushing to get back to Seth Curry anytime soon.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was kind of popular last night. His price continues to climb. I'd rather take a risk on someone like OMP, just
Mhm.
knowing that he does a little bit more in the front court if he can find minutes on the floor here. And yeah, I think to answer your question in so few words,
Yeah.
yes, sub 4K, he does make some sense, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, gonna feel better if THA is out as well. But yeah,
Yes.
again,
Yeah.
5 game slate, there's not much under 4K to like anywhere. He's gonna stand out if you're going kind of stars and scrubs. I don't think in low risk contests I'd necessarily get there, but he does make sense as a punt because again, there's not many good punts to even consider.
Yeah. And then just talking about the other game that has some injury situation, some news. Phoenix as well. We're not getting any good price on them to that point. So it's going to be tough to find value, especially if you are maybe trying to pay up for Booker with KD out. With KD out, he does have a massive usage rate, but we also are getting Bradley Beal back. We currently have him projected to get 28.5 minutes. What are your thoughts on Bradley Beal tonight? Because he is probably a little bit too cheap if he's going to get around 30 minutes. But that being said, we have no idea how many minutes he's going to get. But again, if he gets those minutes, probably a high usage rate for him as well.
Yeah, I think the way we view Bradley Beal here is kind of how we've been viewing Chris Middleton for the Bucks. Like he's not going to be the number one play on the floor with Booker there. We
Mhm.
know that his minutes are limited, but he's still a little bit too cheap knowing his upside. So like again, in low risk contests, knowing he's probably going to be capped at 30 max, even if this game's competitive, I don't know that you could feel great about it. But at the same time, I mean, he does feel a little bit cheap knowing what he's capable of. If he gets hot, he could certainly exceed value. And if I don't know what the rotations are going to look like here for Vogel, but if he does stagger minutes with Booker, similar to
Yeah.
what we're talking about with Dallas, then his ceiling gets even higher. So I like him at the price. I feel similar about Middleton, not now that Middleton's
Yeah.
minutes cap seem to be lifted, but last week, like those
Yeah.
conversations we're having about Middleton feel very similar to what we're getting with Bradley Beal here. And there's still no Grayson Allen either. I think that's
Yeah.
notable. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do think he's in play, but I agree. I mean, Booker at low ownership makes a lot of sense to me tonight.
Yeah. And he's someone that we could see get like 38 minutes really. And like, I know he needs to really go off to like hit that price tag, but I don't mind it.
Mhm.
I do want to get your thoughts on Eric Gordon on FanDuel. He's 5.5, pulling in as somewhat of chalk at 31% projected own. The second highest owned Suns player on FanDuel, Drew Eubanks, is pulling in some ownership as well. What are your kind of two thoughts on those two plays on FanDuel?
Yeah, so I like Gordon, especially if he's coming off the bench. I think the projected starting lineup is going to have Booker, Beal, Okogie, KBD, Nurk. Wouldn't be surprised if they went to Gordon on the wing, but I'm guessing he comes off the bench, which should keep his usage
Mhm.
rate high, less minutes with Booker and Beal. Obviously, that's beneficial. I think the DK price is tough to get excited about. I mean, he's kind of a pay up to be contrarian play
Yeah.
over there, but really not a core for me at all. But I do like him on FanDuel. As for Eubanks, this is tricky. I mean, we've seen base job kind of take over in some of these games with Katie
Mhm.
out, kind of flop in others. I think one or the other probably has a good game here, but I'm not confident in calling which one it's going to be. I know that we get Eubanks pretty damn cheap on FanDuel at 3,900, where you can
Yeah.
play him the power forward. Again, we're lacking value on this slate, at least like true punt level value. So I think
Mhm.
he makes some sense there. But again, this is a guy who hasn't played 20 minutes in weeks. So even with KD out, I don't know that we can confidently project that for him here. And the Warriors aren't that big of a team. I know they have Looney,
No.
Dre, etc., but I don't know that they need to lean on Eubanks off the bench much. We could see more minutes from guys like Watanabe, etc., on the wing, which could cut into him, even though they play different positions. So I feel good about Gordon on FanDuel, not so great about Eubanks on either site. But again, if we don't get better
Yeah.
value, I think it does make some sense to at least consider him. But I'm not locking him in for 25 minutes or anything like that. What are we projecting Eubanks for? I guess is worth.
He's projected for 16 minutes right now, which is
Yeah,
not enough.
that's right. Yeah, that's where I would have him.
Mhm.
So yeah, for me, I like Gordon on FanDuel. That's really it for those two, at least.
I have a stupid question. It's kind of rhetorical, but I mean the value plays that we mentioned today, they're going to do better than the ones from yesterday, the sub 4K plays. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean the bar is low. Yeah, I think so.
but looking at the guards that we have on this slate, it's kind of clear that Luka is the pay up play, and I would say, arguably speaking, he's probably a little bit too cheap on really both sides. Just compared to how good of a play he is, like you see the OF index, it's almost a 4-point difference between Luka and Booker, and I think Booker is a phenomenal play tonight. And then from there, it's probably Paul George, and then from there, James Harden, and then Exum, and then maybe Kobe White, who I still think is too cheap. I personally am still going to probably roll with him, Kobe White there. But where do you see this? Are you maybe starting at Luka? Are you maybe starting at Paul George guard wise, or are you maybe going with maybe White?
With the extra half hour to build tonight, I am going to do like 20 and the $2. So I'm going to have a little bit more variety than usual. But I
Mhm.
will say Luka's kind of my priority. After that, Booker, I'd love to get both of them in as much as
Yeah,
possible. I just think the ownership on Booker is wrong. Like, I know he's expensive. I know
yeah.
Beal's back. It's not the best matchup versus Golden State, but it should be a competitive game at home. He's been excellent with KD out. And I don't know that Beal's just suddenly going to take up a ton of usage right away. I mean, he could, but at the same time, I think he's still reasonably priced for his upside, even with KD in as a tournament play.
Mhm.
So in low risk, I like Booker in spite of the ownership. Love Luka here. So those are priorities as far as paying up. I do totally want to get to tons of Exum. I think as far as chalk goes, I feel better about him than any of these other guard plays. And I did want to bring up, I think Jamal Murray's questionable. That's something we have to
Yeah.
keep an eye on. It's a back-to-back for Denver. So my hunch is maybe he sits. And if he does, I think you could get to some Reggie Jackson and feel pretty good about it. as kind of
Yeah.
like a lower mid-range value play. But yeah, I am looking to pay up for those big two for the most part, Doncic, Booker, and then getting a lot of Exum is kind of mid-range value there. But I'm with you on Kobe White. I do think he's awesome. It's been
Yeah.
fun to see him kind of take over that team.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
crazy.
yeah, Levine's a good player. Like I was talking to Chuck the other day. I was like, I really loved the draft pick when they took Kobe White, and it just didn't seem to be a good fit. It's awesome to finally see him doing what I knew he was capable of. But Levine's a good player. It's just they're almost too similar.
I don't know. He's
It's weird. Like Levine, it's like he needs a facilitator next to him, and Kobe White's kind of a score first guard, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So
Levine to me is almost like Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole, if that makes sense. Like he's and that's
he's a little grittier than those two. I get what you're
yes,
saying.
yeah. It's there's
Like
not a
all the
comparison, I
talent is
guess.
there, but like,
Mhm.
is he mentally there half the time? Is
Yeah,
the question.
yeah.
But
Um, I do kind of want to gather your thoughts real quickly for Chicago. They are coming in off of OT game. Kobe White had 45 minutes in that game. I mean, I want to see what the model says as well, but do you think that we could see his minutes maybe go from like the 38 that he's been getting, maybe to 33? We have him projected right now to get 38. And again, if he gets 38 minutes, to me at 9 and 7% ownership in a game that isn't too much of a blowout risk. I mean, there's some. I don't know. That seems to be a spot to jump on. But I'm very curious about your thoughts with the minutes there. Obviously, coming in off the OT game.
yeah, it's tricky because we haven't seen him play a back to back since Levine's
Mm-hmm.
been out, so there's really nothing to base it off of. I think 38's a fine projection. I mean, they should be fine here at home. Um, I don't know. Obviously, he's not playing 40, but even in 36 minutes, I think he's a pretty solid play.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I mean, I like DeRozan as well.
Yep.
He's a forward though, so we can wait to talk about him. I know Discord was pretty pissed at AO last night. He got his minutes and he put up a Tony Snell, 0 stats,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
I mean, God, dude, it's just
He
been
had one
almost.
foul, I believe, actually. So
Oh no,
he got on the stat sheet.
brutal
Crazy.
man. But yeah, I think if I'm taking anything from that game, White's definitely one of the pieces. And is Caruso still questionable?
He is. I looked at kind of the report. He's not projected to start right now. So if he sits, I like that almost just forces the minutes there a little bit more, regardless.
Yeah, that was my thought as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like Kobe White. I think he's solid here. We'll talk about some of these other Bulls when we get to the other
Yeah.
positions. But yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about the minutes on a back to back. He's young. He's got the legs for it.
Yeah, just looking at some of the other kind of potential guards that we could be on, like someone like Malik Monk is a player that a lot of people had been on in the past. Maybe someone we could go back to, just sorting by kind of DK value as well. We're not getting that many good discounted plays. I mean, I'm scrolling. And I see Cam Reddish as like the only sub 5K play that's popping, and then and I don't see any of those plays as ones I want to end up on.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I do like Malik Monk. I think he's probably got to be one of the leading candidates for sixth man of the year at this point. He's been awesome off the bench. Really does relish that bench role. And 5,600 on FanDuel, that's just wrong.
Yeah.
I think 61 on DK is about where he should be priced. I don't know that you're going to get a huge ceiling over that in terms of value, but man, 5,600 is wrong. I consider him a core play over there in low risk contests, and I think he has the upside. We've seen it to get to on DK as well. This game does have the highest total on the board, so there should be a lot of points here. We have seen him close at times too, which is certainly helpful. So even though he's not in the starting lineup, he is consistently playing. I wanted to say 30 minutes, but he's not. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been around
No one's playing
27.
consistent minutes there. They're
Yeah,
just
I know.
not.
But we're getting a floor of 27 minutes out of
Yes.
him, which I think is enough to feel good about, especially if he's getting that extra usage with the second unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. My concern would be that someone like Kevin Herter finally has a good game, and I think part of the reason as to why Monk's been going off is because Herter has. I don't know. It's just
That's true.
It feels tough to trust. I get the love GPP wise upside, especially on FanDuel. To your point, where definitely too cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Other guards, I'm not really seeing any. I did find Strother's performance last night to be a fun one. Again, we don't have any like value. Is he someone you'd be looking at all, or is that just a case in which he was playing well, shot the basketball well? Michael Porter Jr. was not playing well. Like, I think he could be in play. I guess the second part of that question would be, if Jamal Murray is out, would we maybe want to get to him then?
I mean, here's the thing: Malone usually hates young players, and like, I think he got hot last night and he let him run. But like,
Yeah.
man, it's an ownership thing. Like, if he's going to be unowned, I think you get to him in large field tournaments, feel pretty good about it as a punt. Know that he's boom bust. He has a very low floor. But if he's drawing like 15, even 20%, I just think that's a little too chasey for me, especially knowing he's under a coach who kind of hates to play young guys.
Mhm.
But man, it is tricky. Like, just seeing that and seeing what he's capable of, knowing we have no value, like I'm very tempted by it. But again, game with the lowest total, I think that was kind of an outlier. I don't know that we can expect him to get those minutes consistently. But to your point, if Murray's out, I mean, he could see more minutes, and
Uh,
he's probably feeling himself right now. So maybe he
all
takes
right.
more shots. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's an ownership thing. If no one's going to play him, I do recommend maybe getting to a little. But if people are seeing that game last night, maybe chasing it, I would get
Mhm.
away from it. So just kind of zig where the field zags, I guess. But where's he
Yeah.
at right now? Zero ownership?
Like,
Yeah.
he's 9% on DraftKings, which I would say is higher than I would have thought. FanDuel not owned at all. So I would imagine, though, if Murray's out and his minutes go up, he probably would get some ownership with the recency bias. But
Yeah,
yeah.
Christian Brown only played 10 minutes last night. I don't know that that's going to be something we can count on. Like, Brown's a
Yeah.
player that has won favor there. He was very important to that title run last year. I think in competitive games, more often than not, we're going to see Brown getting that extra run that went to
Yeah.
Strother last night. But again, in no ownership on a slate with no value, I don't hate it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm back and forth
Yeah.
on it. But he's not in my first few builds. I'll certainly say that.
That game was weird. It was a blowout for most of the third and fourth quarter, and then it wasn't. So that could have been part of the reason as to why he got minutes, and they just stuck with him too. But it's weird. I should bring up. I know you know this, but the reason why I'm trying to call it potential value plays is because we clearly want to pay for Luka, and that's why we're trying to search for some sort of good sub 4K play so we can feel more comfortable feeling Luka in. And maybe we'll have that here with the forwards. Now, the forward spot is where we're gaining a ton of ownership both on DraftKings and FanDuel. On DraftKings, I mean, we got four players above 30% in Dante Exum, Kawhi Leonard, Austin Reeves, and then also Anthony Davis. Obviously, Davis is center eligible as well. On FanDuel, basically the exact same thing. Exum, Leonard, and then Paul George. And then we actually have some kind of high owned plays. Wiggins pulling in some chalk there, so definitely interesting there. I would say forward is a fun spot tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm more willing to take some risks at forward here than I was at guard. I mean, Keegan Murray, he hasn't been
Mhm.
great, but we know what he's capable of. He's kind of around that 5K range. I think there's a chance Levert comes back tonight. I don't know if we got that news yet. If he does, that would kind of hurt Struess and Dean Wade,
Mhm.
but those are guys you could at least consider, I think, if we don't
Yeah.
get more to open up. So still no Evan Mobley for the Cavs. So if Levert's out as well, I never feel good about playing Dean Wade, but he's at least someone to have in your player pool as a punt. I think Okogie with KD out hasn't been great, but he's another guy who has shown
Yeah.
that he has upside if he's going to see extra minutes or usage. It's not that I feel good about any of these guys. I'll add Harrison Barnes to this group as well.
Yeah.
It's just like they're all okay. I mean, I'll really like Tim Hardaway Jr. if he doesn't draw much ownership. I'd be surprised if he starts if he is in and healthy. But
Yeah.
with Jones out, coming off the bench, I think he's a guy who could definitely post a nice score here. But yeah, I kind of like living in this 5 to 6K range as much as possible. I will say Kawhi is way too cheap on DK. I don't know why he's priced down
Yeah.
to 8K now. That doesn't really make sense. The field's getting there though. He is going to be popular.
So I was wondering, I'm like, is that just like a lazy pricing? Maybe thinking that he was going to sit on the back end of a back to back. I that's the only thing I could come up with because he's cheaper than he was last night against Portland. So it's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird.
And when we sort it by like value right now, at least DraftKings wise, it's kind of, and this might be the tough part about paying up for Luka. It's kind of clear you could go Exum, who is priced up a little bit, Kawhi, who does feel pretty safe, and you could even go like Paul George if you just want to be a little bit safer with the Clippers. But you got AD and LeBron. If they're going to be playing heavy minutes again, and not even playing heavy minutes because they're both pretty cheap, but I guess with Anthony Davis and LeBron, do you think they're going to see around the same minutes? Like they're getting close to 40 minutes in the playing tournament. And if so, are they way too cheap? Or at their current projected minutes, we have 38 and 37 for them. Are they still too cheap? Specifically on DraftKings, on FanDuel, I would say they're probably correctly priced.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they're going to be playing 40 minutes a night. I think around 35 makes more sense. Like
Yeah.
the rotations we saw for the play-in, like it cut into guys like Rui, Christie, some of these secondary plays that they just give a little bit of extra run to give the starters a breather. But I do still think they're both sub 10 on sub 10K on DK does feel
Yeah.
too cheap. I like both of them. I think they're fine. In terms of like positionality, I think we have more depth maybe at forward tonight than we do center. So maybe I'd get to
Yeah.
Davis just for that reason alone. But I mean, I really do like the upside for both of them here. I mean, historically, this has been a good matchup for bigs too. Dallas not really great in terms of front court defense, so that should favor Davis here. I think he'll probably be able to do whatever he wants when he's on the floor.
I'm pretty
But
sure they met earlier this season. Let me see. Yeah, against Dallas, Davis. Oh wow, he didn't do well. 36 DraftKings points now. That's shocking. But
yeah, I wonder if he visited the locker room at any point in that game. I mean, that's the
right.
thing with Davis. Like, there are games like the tournament final where he looks like the best player in basketball, and then some nights he
Yeah.
just doesn't really show up. So there's some risk with that. I think you always have the higher floor with LeBron, but
Mhm.
also Davis almost always has the higher ceiling of the two.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're splitting hairs picking between
Yeah.
those two. They're both priced the same on DK. They're both excellent upside plays. I'm fine with both of them. Again, I don't think they play 38 minutes here. If this is a tight game, though, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I find the forwards tonight to be pretty difficult in the sense that there's so many plays that I like. I know we kind of joked around with Clay at the beginning of the season, and I know he's mostly shooting guard eligible, but like on
He's fine.
FanDuel, he's pulling in too low owned, or he's pulling in as chalk on DraftKings. Maybe he's finally too low owned. And then like DeMar DeRozan, we kind of mentioned in passing, he's someone that's probably going to get heavy minutes tonight. Priced at 8.2. I feel like he's kind of safe as well.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Kobe White already, but DeRozan's also looked really good in the absence of Zach LaVine with that extra usage. I mean, he's more scoring dependent than a Kobe White.
Mhm.
Really, only scores the basketball. I mean, we've gotten some boards and assists, etc. But
Yeah.
if his shot's not falling, it could be rough. But at the same time, I mean, I do think he's fine here at his price. He's kind of priced the same as all those Clipper guys. I
Yeah.
think he's a little bit safer just because he's not sharing as much. Um, but yeah, I'm fine getting to some DeRozan for sure. One guy I wanted to bring up, I'll use this as a segue, is Patrick Williams. I mean, the price gives me some like pause. It's like
Mhm.
5,700 for Patrick Williams, but he's hitting value pretty consistently. I think if we do get Caruso out, those minutes are going to be even more secure. I think even with Caruso in, I would add him to that group of guys I was talking about before, like Barnes,
Yeah.
Okogie. Like I don't feel great about any of them, but I feel okay about all of them. Like I'm not going to be mad to have them in my
Yeah.
lineups. And Williams probably is the highest floor of that group, even with Caruso in. So I think getting to some Patrick Williams, even in a slow paced game, makes some sense. But yeah, the price is getting heavy on him. But I mean, he's hitting value. So it's kind of like the Dante Exum situation. Like
Mhm.
a few weeks ago, if you told me I'd be comfortable paying 5,700 for Williams or 6K for Dante Exum, I'd say you were
Right.
crazy. But I mean, things change fast in the NBA,
They do.
and here we are. So Williams makes some sense. I don't mind him. Kind of as like a mid-range value-ish type play. Not super popular, but again, not a massive upside out of him. But I mean, on a slate like this, if you're playing stars and scrubs, if you could get a solid floor for some of these mid-range guys and nail the right payups, you're
Yeah.
going to be in pretty good shape. So
Yeah, I'm struggling with the forward spot because it almost feels like we need to put in at least two, probably three players like that are above 8K into the lineups, which means we're probably not going to be able to fit in Luca, which then means I don't know, we're going to have a bad guard play, but like to your point, there probably are a little bit more kind of risk reward based plays like Patrick Williams, for example. They're a little bit cheaper. They might not be as, I don't know. I feel like he's a little bit safe, but like Harrison Barnes and whatnot, they might give you more upside than some of those other guards at a similar price tag. So it's a fascinating spot there tonight.
yeah, one more I think we got to touch on because he's
Yeah.
popular is Austin Reeves coming off the
Yeah.
bench for the Lakers. He's been tremendous. I think he's a little bit underpriced on DK at 5,800. Probably your first forward in low risk contest,
Yeah.
honestly. Just again, mispriced, been excellent with that extra usage coming off the bench. So yeah, Austin Reeves looks like a core play to me. Very, very popular, but again, it's tough to trust much in this range. So I think
It's
he does make sense.
what's fascinating though is like sorted by DK value. He's not exactly popping up as a play that like we would have to go out of our way to make. And I find that fascinating because it's almost like you probably do need to just eat that chalk at that cheap price tag. Again, we don't have many plays that we can get on his multiple position eligibility, but kind of the value rating, other thing this rating would say maybe he's a fade.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the minutes, and I think we're projecting the minutes accurately. Like he's not a guy who's consistently over 30 minutes. Just his point per minute rate has been ridiculous. Like I don't know how long he's going to have to sustain
Yeah.
that for projections to kind of think it's a real thing. I don't know if I think it's a real thing, but I know he passes the eye test when he's on the floor.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot, so I don't know. I think again, it's kind of a product of the slate more than I'm like loving Austin Reeves as a play,
Yeah.
but again, we're comparing him to guys like I don't know Grant Williams, Patrick Williams, Harrison Barnes. Like I definitely
Mm-hmm.
feel better about him than I do some of these other guys. Keegan Murray. Yeah, Draymond's a little bit
But
more expensive, so I think
kind
it
of
makes sense.
to our point about the Lakers, like where we might see like LeBron AD get maybe less minutes, then that would mean maybe some like Reeves gets us 2 more minutes or something, maybe even Russell as well to that point.
Yeah, that would be big.
Let's go ahead and move on into centers. I guess we kind of already teased Anthony Davis a little bit as a center play. I think we both think he's a phenomenal play. But center wise, we look at like DraftKings value rating and even FanDuel value rating. The best play is Derek Lively, and he's not too chalky. I mean, 29% is pretty chalk, but there's other plays that are pulling in some ownership as well. Let's get your thoughts on Derek Lively because I'm pretty sure he had a good game against the Lakers last time out. And you look at the last game they just had, went off in that game. He's been much more consistent lately. Oh, no, against the Lakers, he didn't go off, but been much more consistent lately. Is he someone you're finding the chalk on?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough matchup for him. I think he got into some foul trouble the last time these teams played. Certainly a concern here again at chalk, but I think in terms of point per dollar value, he is probably your center in low risk contest. I mean, if you could find 600 more for Zubox, I do feel a
No.
little bit better about him. It seems that fire was lit under him with Ty Lue playing a bunch of Daniel Tice minutes a couple weeks ago, and Zubac's been excellent ever since. So
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a comparable play. Like I feel a little bit better about Zoo here, just given the matchup.
Yeah.
But I think both are fine point per dollar. And if you're lacking value, I mean, you could play AD at power forward. You could play both of these guys at center and feel pretty good about it. But yeah, I think Lively's good. I just think he's overowned on DK.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see where Zoo's on. I mean, not a huge ownership discount. I was kind of hoping
No.
for a wider gap, but I think
Yeah.
it does make some sense as a pivot. But those two, I think, point per dollar in that mid range make a lot of sense. Yeah, Trey Lyles showing up as chalk is giving me
He
some pause,
is.
though. I know he had a great game last night, but yeah, I got to dig a little deeper into this one.
Well, again, with the Kings there, it's like what can we trust? What can we ever trust with them? He had 23 minutes in that game. Did he get those minutes because he was shooting the basketball well? 6 for 7, 5 for 6. I tend to believe so.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we get his normal minutes, actually, I mean, this could be the cheap play that we end up on, I guess. He's not going to insanely hurt us when he gets his normal 16, 18 minutes and he gets 15 or so points. But I think expecting 30, which I think a lot of people are doing tonight, that's not smart. I mean, we haven't projected to get 16.7 minutes. The data doesn't love him too much as a play. I guess value wise, I'd be fine eating the chalk. Upside wise, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like no one's hurt for them. Like there's nobody out. I know Alex Len's out, but it's not like he's really a needle mover. Um, so yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I think again, it's a product of the slate. Like we talked about Maxine Prosper earlier as maybe a pivot.
Yeah.
If Lyles is going to be super chalky, I think you can kind of make that move in tournaments. Drew Eubanks, I mean, he's another similar play. Like I
Yeah.
think of that group, I guess Lyles has the highest floor, but saying that out loud like does not
Right.
feel good. I mean, again, 6 for 7, 5 for 6 from 3 last night. I think people are going to see that in the game log and just click him, but I'm not expecting that. I mean, that was his best game of the past 2 seasons, maybe. And there were times last year he was playing in starting center when they had Rashawn Holmes before they got Sabonis. So I don't know. I don't love the play, but again, it's like necessary evil on this slate if you're looking to
Yeah.
jam like a Luca AD and or Booker. I don't think it's the worst punt, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say. I feel good about Trey Lyles.
I agree. I do think we need to touch on Cleveland a little bit with Mobley out. We saw Jared Allen have a massive 15 minutes played, 15 DraftKings points, fouling out. What are we thinking with him? Because he has been getting in foul trouble. He hasn't been playing minutes, but with Mobley out, if he does get 30 minutes, I think we would love him. But it does feel risky against Boston as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best matchup for Allen. It's also not the worst. I know Horford's pretty good defensively, but he's going to be on the floor with just KP a lot. Man, like the foul trouble hasn't always been a thing with him. Like it's kind of a
Yeah.
new development recently. I don't know if it's the matchups. Like he's played Orlando twice. Both those games were against Goga though. It's almost like
Right.
Banchero. I don't know. I'd have to watch and see what the hell's going on here.
And
Like
I think Miami was Robinson too. Like it's not banned.
yeah,
It's
these
weird.
aren't terrible matchups for him. So like, and again, he was coming off an injury, so it's like, is there a minutes limit on him, or is it just because he's in foul trouble? If he's not in foul trouble, is he playing over 30 minutes? Because if he is, without Mobley, he's awesome here at his price. So
Right.
I like it. Like I think he's a good tournament play, but at the same time, there are plenty of ways for this to go wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think if Levert's out, like I never like playing Dean Wade ever.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah.
if Levert's out, like this is the matchup where I think I would maybe get to some of him. But again, I think
No.
we're still waiting on that Levert news. Last I saw, I think he was at shoot around. I don't know if he participated. It's an injury management / illness, so they're just like throwing everything on the injury report they can.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the deal is there, but again, this is the first game on the slate, locking at 7:30 Eastern, so we should have that news pre-locked. But yeah, I like Allen as a tournament center. Not going to say he's like a core player or anything like that,
Mhm.
but I do think he's a lot better than what we've seen out of him the last few games.
And I will say on FanDuel, he's power forward eligible. I would have thought that would elevate his ownership a little bit more. It did. It did not. So I think he's a pretty awesome pivot or leverage spot, I should say, on FanDuel for that. I do want to answer Jose's question real quick. Jokic or Luka on DK tiers? Which one would you be prioritizing tonight?
With Kyrie out, I think I just have to go Luka by default. Higher total game, faster pace. I mean, you're picking between the two best fantasy players in the league,
Right? Yeah.
so it's tough. But that is tiers. That's the game. I would go
Yeah.
with Luka tonight. I think the model favors him slightly as well.
I would agree there. Were there any other center plays that you wanted to bring up? I'm just refreshing the data real quick.
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird one, and I'm just going to use like a bit of news to kind of transition here. So
Mhm.
Caruso was just ruled out, and
Okay.
in a weird way, that does kind of secure like 15 minutes or so for Drummond. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think it's insane. Like, I just wish he was a little cheaper. You're paying 5,100 on FanDuel, using up that center spot. Not something I'm crazy about doing, but on a night like tonight where I'm doing 20 lineups, I think I'll probably have him in one or two. On DK, where you could play two centers, if you're not liking any of these forward values, Drummond isn't insane. And again, you're not going to get many minutes out of him, but if he plays 15, 16 minutes, which he'll probably need to here against Joker, I don't think it's a crazy play. But again, very much boomer bust. You're going to need him to do a lot when he's on the floor because he's not going to play more than 15, 16 minutes. But historically, with Caruso out, that has kind of been a trickle down effect where he does get some extra run. But yeah, as far as like other centers go, I did just kind of lead off
Here,
with Zoom. Oh,
just
go
wait
ahead.
real quick on that. There is the potential for Vucevic to get into foul trouble against Denver as well. So like we could be getting like a little bit of a double dip there where we're already playing because of the point per minute, but if he gets a few more minutes because of that, like he could really go off. So I do like that call.
Nice, man. Yeah, no, that's a good call too. I mean, the one way he gets to 20 minutes is probably if Vooch gets in foul
Yeah.
trouble. So we've seen it happen to a lot of centers against Joker.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of led off centers with probably my favorite GPP center, which is Zubac tonight. Again, like I never like to play him as chalk, and I've kind of been anti-Zoo most of the time. But yeah, in this matchup, I mean, Sabonis just is not good defensively. He has been their center. And yeah, it's just a good matchup. Like I like the price, I like the matchup, I like the ownership. I think it all makes sense. He's checking all these boxes for me, so
So
I'm probably going to get to a lot of Zubats tonight.
my follow-up question to that would be the Clippers. We have Paul George, we have Kawhi pulling in as pretty good plays. Do we potentially run it back then with Trey Lyles? Maybe Monk eat the chalk there because I do feel like those are. I mean, we might I know we don't like to typically go out of our way to game stack, but I feel like we have a slight game stack, and I feel like all the 3 Clipper players that we want to go out of our way to play are all in pretty good spots, kind of cheap, and I feel like that's the correct move tonight. What's your kind of thoughts on maybe just extending out a little bit further for that game?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: the smaller the slate, the more kind of merit there is to game stacking, and this is kind of on the smaller end, so I don't think it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But yeah, if you're super heavily invested in these Clippers guys, my favorite run back is going to be Monk, even on DK. I just
Okay.
like what he's been doing. I like how aggressive he is. His shot is falling right now. Obviously, if you could fit Fox, which you probably can't if you're playing
Yeah.
2 of the big 3 from the Clippers, he would be better. But yeah, I mean, I like the spot. Sabonis has been great, but again, I would rather just go to probably LeBron or AD if I'm paying
Mhm.
9,500 for anything. And again, if I'm prioritizing any payups tonight, it's mostly Luca and then Booker at guard. So it's just tough for me to pay up at center. So I think
Mhm.
Monk's my favorite there. Lyles is fine again as like a last
Yeah.
piece in. I did just want to say too, with Caruso out, I do feel a little bit better about Patrick Williams now. Another forward we could consider is Torrey Craig off the bench, boom bust, 4,500 on DK. He should see a little bit of extra run here. So yeah, I don't feel great about Torrey Craig, but he is at least viable now. He's going to join that group of low price forwards that allow us to get to some of these pay ups.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Especially if the data updates and has them like kind of low owned, getting all right, 24 minutes. Yeah, I second that call. I don't mind that. Should be safe play for this slate. Just a reminder, guys, if you have any questions, make sure to get those in. I would be happy to answer those. So Daniel Tice, we do have him projected to get minutes tonight. It's just what can we expect from him tonight? That's the issue.
Yeah, the question is like he's back. What does that mean? I mean, he only missed one game. He was in last night against Portland. He didn't miss that game, so he only missed one game. So if you're looking at what Zubats has been doing lately, even
Mhm.
if you take out the game against Utah where he had his ceiling, I mean, yeah, he's still playing 26 to 30 minutes per night. So I think he's fine as a tournament play. Again,
Yeah.
um, in like low risk cash type contest, I would play Lively for the discount over Zubas, but I think Zubas in tournaments probably has more upside. And yes, Tice is back, but Tice has been back. He only missed one game.
Mhm. It's just we're probably, I mean, the projection for Zubac tonight is 28 minutes, so we're not going to see that increase to 30 or 3 or 42, most likely. I
Yeah,
mean,
that one
maybe.
game's an outlier. Like when I'm
Yeah.
saying Zubac's been good, I'm taking that game completely out of the
Yeah.
equation. I mean, his last game against Sacramento, I believe Tice was in. He had 35 fantasy points in 30
Mhm.
minutes. So, um, yeah, Tice does cut into his upside, but Tice only missed that one game, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry too much.
So, we typically try to give a little bit of a first look build. It's going to be very weird for this one because um, we do want to pay up for some of the studs. I don't really see a starting point tonight. I don't know if you do.
I don't necessarily, but I think I want to try to fit Luca with Booker and just see if
Okay.
it's possible. Because I know we don't love the value, but if there's enough we like, I think
Mhm.
that's what I would prefer to do tonight.
So let's just do that. I'm perfectly fine putting those two in. I'm going to use the slider here to just go to like 4.5 on DraftKings salary remaining and just go with the top value. Never mind. It's Cam Reddish and Torian Prince. I don't know if that's.
I mean, one of those two probably has a good game if you want to flip a coin. But I mean, what are we left per player with those two in? Is it 45?
Salary, you mean left if we
Yeah, yeah,
played them
yeah.
both?
I think it's a little higher, or 46.
Yeah.
um,
That's the
uh,
issue. It's like we'd have to probably go Prosper. We'd probably have to go Strawthard and hope to get lucky. If those are the two that we'd want to go with, I think so. But you got maybe Peyton Pritchard, who could be an okay play.
if I'm being 100% honest and transparent, I think the
Mhm.
easier build is to not play Booker,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and go with one of the Lakers. Go with AD or LeBron.
Hmm.
Um,
I would almost say,
because then
shoot,
you're almost at
go.
5K per if you go with those two, I think. Or
For me, I think I'd rather pair those two up together, LeBron and AD, and so I wouldn't be playing Luca together. But that's kind of
interesting.
the conundrum tonight. It's like I
You
don't
can
know. I'd
only
rather
fit
go
two
Paul.
payups. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, I'd rather go Paul George, but I'd probably also rather go White and
Kawhi,
hopefully Kawhi as well. We'll go Kawhi.
8K. Yeah, that should leave us over 5K per, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just over.
Put him in the small forward for now, but we also could do Reeves in there at the shooting guard. He's kind of chalk. Feels safe, right?
Yeah, let's go Reeves. Let's get Exum in there.
Exum, yep. There
Grant
we go.
Williams is another one. I feel pretty good about all those.
I'll switch that here.
Yeah, you're good.
I do want to get Kobe White. I don't know. I just feel like I've been playing him. I kind of want to roll with the hot hand there. I feel like he's too cheap given the upside he's shown. So
okay, then we're really punting.
We are. Well, I don't know. Do we have to go Grant Williams?
No, but I mean he's 4,700. It's not like he's the reason where. Yeah. I mean, the other thing we would do is maybe go Booker instead of Luka to get a little bit more wiggle room. But
yeah,
because like I don't feel good about the floor of a lot of these puns. Like,
so Luka, we're probably hoping he gets to at least 60, right? For Booker, we're hoping at 55. Like that's really what we're shooting for. Like
on a 5-game slate, I think those are good benchmarks. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, then what? We go with like Trey Lyles.
We got to go like Trey Lyles, yeah. And then we'd have to go down from Grant, or I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Don't judge me. I'm doing Prosper for now.
Okay. It's not
a little pivot off of Grant, and then
the issue is we're taking another risk with this guy, whoever it is.
Yes.
Exactly. Who's here? Is it going to be
Pritchard? We could do Pritchard.
Yeah, I guess it is Pritchard. There's really nothing else. And Pritchard's tricky. Like, there's games where he gets hot and he gets extra run and he's awesome. There's also nights where he plays 10 minutes and gets you single-digit fantasy points, which is what I'm more so expecting here against Cleveland. But honestly, like I said, I think maybe we're getting a little greedy trying to fit Luka. Like, you may be able to just go down to Booker, hope he has a comparable game, which is certainly possible. And then you could feel a little bit better about the punts and get to like a Grant Williams instead of a Pritchard or something like that.
That makes it work a lot better for sure. But I don't know. I feel like we have a weird. I don't know. I feel like the Clippers doing Kawhi and Paul George together, and maybe with Zubac there. I feel like we could be getting at least 110 fantasy points. And we're about a third of the way there, and then it's just kind of filling in maybe with chalk.
Yeah, it's not insane. We definitely have to come off Booker to make that happen.
Yeah. It's just like Booker is going to be safe. We know that. But I think the likeliest thing is that Paul George or Kawhi probably cover the spread difference enough.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Kawhi price on DK. Like, I think he's tough not to play at 8K flat tonight.
I agree. Which center did you like the most other than Anthony Davis? Because clearly we want to fit Anthony Davis or LeBron. You kind of mentioned that, but which one was it? Zubac? Would you want to go with the most?
I mean, I guess Lively point per dollar. I mean, I do prefer Zubac just like player to player, but we're really needing every dollar right now. So I think for 600 less, it's probably Lively. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. And honestly, it feels weird not playing White to me. It really does, but maybe this is I know, but maybe that's the slate in which he finally doesn't have a good game. Coming in off of an OT game, it would make sense, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if you pull Booker for White, then I think you have a lot of flexibility. And just kind of go with that balance build. Maybe Kawhi's your most expensive play, or you could get to one of the Lakers now. But maybe like when we don't have great punts, like usually logic says to go more balanced. So yeah, you could get White, Kawhi, and then maybe something 6-7K range.
Yeah. My issue is that I don't love Reeves and Grant Williams too much, but they are too cheap. You know, it's a weird slate. It really is.
You have to find the mispriced guys, and it's a little bit tricky to do that. Tim Hardaway's in according to Louis V. So shouts out. Looks like we have some Celtics questions too.
Okay. Yeah, about Hauser and Tatum. We'll give our thoughts on those. Actually, before that, I want to get your thoughts on Porzingis because he seems very cheap, low ownership, projected to get 30 minutes. If Jared Allen continues to struggle, I feel like he could go off as well.
Yeah, if he played 29 minutes coming off the injury last time against the Knicks, looked
Mhm.
good. I think he should get to 30 plus here. Not the best matchup. I mean, yes, Allen's been terrible in terms of fantasy. Still one of the
Mhm.
better defensive centers in a slow paced game. But yeah, I mean, comparing him to the other big players from the Celtics, like I think he's the most mispriced. Just
Yeah.
kind of using this to transition into Wayne's question about Tatum. I mean, whenever you get a player like Tatum at low ownership, I think it's a good thing to get to in tournaments. We talk about this all the time. Like if you're sorting by OF index and you see a guy that's like sub 5, sub 10%, those are good tournament plays just because you know that on any given night, regardless of matchup, they're capable of big things. So yeah, we're seeing him very low owned on DK, a little bit more popular on FanDuel. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think he's fine as a tournament play. Not a first guy in, but you got to think the rest of the field's kind of thinking the same way. So in tournaments, I like it. Wouldn't really be playing him in low risk or kind of smaller field stuff against Cleveland. But again, all the reasons we don't like him are the reasons to like him as a tournament play.
Mhm. And then Sam Hauser, he's a fine play. We know he's going to get 20 or so minutes. Does feel somewhat safe. Maybe just as good of a play as Grant Williams, but it's more like might as well try to chase the upside with Grant Williams because you know he's probably going to get more minutes. And with Kyrie out, I'm better off chasing that, I feel like, or paying up for Exum, hoping for that increased usage.
Yeah, I mean Boston's healthy, so I don't know. I will say this: I definitely feel better about Hauser than I do about Pritchard.
Mhm.
Probably slightly prefer Grant Williams, but if you need the 400, I do think that's a reasonable pivot. And just
Yep.
keep in mind if you're locking in guys in these early games, this goes for Williams as Hauser, as well as Hauser. I mean, then you're not going to have that kind of maneuverability later in the night if things do change. Like if Murray's ruled out, you want to get to Reggie Jackson, or
Yep.
suddenly Mike Malone has a crazy dream or something and decides to start Strother, you're going to want to get to
Yep.
him. So yeah, I do think that Hauser's fine. It's just you're locking in more from these early games, which kind of limits your maneuverability throughout the night as we do get more
Yep.
news, if we do get more news.
We got news that Levert's active in the comments there. That just pretty much means Dean Wade, who is someone that we didn't want to have to think about playing. We're probably not thinking about.
Yep.
I mean, we might still be if Allen gets into foul trouble, but it's definitely not as plausible.
Yeah, that takes me off Wade
Yeah.
pretty firmly.
And I did just refresh the data, looking at kind of the value tonight. It's nothing. I mean, it's Exum, he's chalk for a reason. Kawhi, he's chalk for a reason. Lively, he's chalk for a reason. AD, chalk for, like, the good value plays that we have data wise are also popping up ownership wise on both sides, FanDuel and DraftKings. There's no reason to really fade the chalk. Unless you're trying to get up to Luka, unless you're overweight on Luka or Jokic or Tatum, to your point, or Devin Booker. That's like really the only reason to not play the chalk is to prioritize one of the studs more than the field is.
Yep. So I think it makes sense to go balanced tonight as much as possible. But that being said, the really expensive guys are going to be low owned because everyone's going balanced. So if you could find some punts you're comfortable with, feel free. But I think like in low risk, if you're building logically, it makes sense to go more balanced than stars and scrubs on a slate like this.
And then just real quickly, lastly as well, we're just looking at the ownership for DraftKings and FanDuel. Exum is starting to get to 48%, 44%. He's the highest owned player on the slate. Is that too high, or is there, which would be too high? 60% if it got to that height?
Honestly, on a 5 game slate where I don't like the value, like he's
Yeah,
the type of play I just play anyway. Like
I agree. I
like
agree.
there's logic to fading him, and like again, I'm not going to have him in 100% of my lineups tonight, but if he's 50% owned, I'll probably have him in 75 ish and feel pretty good about it. Um, Again, we're missing not only Kyrie, but who else? Derek Jones. THA is
Yep.
back. I will say I like THA a lot as a tournament pivot.
Yeah.
Probably going to get to some of him, but yeah, I mean, there's not much good chalk. There's not much good value on the slate. So Exum's kind of is what he is. I think you kind of have to get to him here.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick questions as well. Biggest negative for Fox, I would say just, I mean, there's not a
Price.
big negative. It's just the price. Yeah.
It's just the price. That's it. Yeah, because if you're
And
paying
the,
for Fox, you're not paying for much else. Again, it's tough to fit even two studs in a lineup tonight. So it's just opportunity cost. It's not that Fox is a bad play. He's a good play if you could find value that you
Mhm.
like around him. But again, kind of boomer bust.
Then our last question here for Phoenix, just it's basically like who's the value play for Phoenix, and we really don't have it. They're priced correctly tonight. Maybe a little bit of Beal is too cheap, especially on DraftKings, FanDuel. Eubanks is a little bit too cheap. Maybe even Utah getting 20 minutes.
Gordon
Yeah,
on
it's
FanDuel
gonna.
for sure. Eric Gordon on
Oh yeah,
FanDuel
yeah.
for
Sorry,
sure.
sorry. Yep.
But yeah, the meta question. I mean, I know he had a good game last time, but this is another one of those situations. It's like you don't know if he's going to be in the rotation on a given
Mm-hmm.
night. If I knew he was going to get 15 to 20 minutes, I'd say he's one of the better value plays. But he's not a guy who's always in the rotation, even with these other bodies out. Again, Golden State isn't the biggest team. I don't know that they need him, but if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I mean, fine to mix him in, but
Yeah.
not safe. It's not safe.
Yeah, if he was min price, maybe think about it. But
Mm.
they've been doing a good job at that to the point where we don't have to think about stuff like that.
Mhm.
But real quickly, I'll do a Discord chat call out, and then we'll begin out of here, guys. So, real quickly, the Discord will be going live here in about 20 or so minutes. It always goes live about 30 minutes before lineup lock. Really depends on the slate. On a normal slate, it will be. So that'll be tonight. Jump on in there. Link to join. That's going to be in the description below. But yeah, that's really it for me. Do you have any last second thoughts or?
No, just keep an eye on news as always. Again, not a ton of great value. I think you're better off building in the mid range tonight. But yeah, a lot of competitive games. I think it's a good size slate. So definitely get in the Discord if you're not already, and keep an eye on the model as it will update throughout the night.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.